For 2 decades, this wasn't just traffic noise, it was the heartbeat of the British economy. Before the motorways slashed across the countryside, and long before the word transit became shorthand for a van, the Bedford CA was the undisputed king of the road. Arriving in 1952, this pug-nosed, wide-eyed little vehicle didn't look like a revolutionary. It looked modest. It looked, frankly, a bit odd. But this stubby machine was about to carry the entire weight of the post-war recovery on its narrow axles. It was the vehicle that brought the modern world to your doorstep. It delivered the bread, the coal, the post, and the laundry. It took us to work, and eventually, it took us on holiday. Yet, if you look around the roads of Britain today, the silence is deafening. An icon that was produced in the hundreds of thousands, a vehicle as culturally significant as the Mini or the Land Rover, has simply vanished into thin air. It is a ghost. So, how did the van that built modern Britain disappear so completely? To understand its death, we first have to understand why it was born. To appreciate the genius of the Bedford CA, you have to look at what the poor British van driver was dealing with in 1951. The typical delivery van of the era was barely evolved from the horse and cart. Most were just pre-war saloon cars with a metal box welded onto the back. They were long, cumbersome, difficult to park, and because the bonnet stuck out 6 feet in front of the driver, they wasted a huge amount of road space. But Britain was entering a new era, the new Elizabethan age. The austerity of the war years was slowly lifting, and commerce was booming. The narrow Victorian terraced streets of our industrial towns were crying out for a completely different approach. Enter Vauxhall Motors in Luton. The design team there looked at the problem and decided to rewrite the rulebook. They realized that the driver didn't need to sit behind the engine. They could sit next to it. They created a semi-forward control layout. It was a masterpiece of packaging. By shoving the engine back into the cabin so it sat under a metal hump between the driver and the passenger, they drastically shortened the vehicle. You could park a Bedford CA in a space barely larger than a Morris Minor. Yet, because the driver was shoved right to the front, the back was cavernous. It could swallow a payload that would break a lesser vehicle's axles. It was this packaging that gave the CA its distinctive face. That short, pug-nose front end and the deep, split windscreen gave it a startled, friendly expression. It wasn't beautiful in the Italian sense, but it was perfectly proportioned for the tight squeeze of a British high street. And then there was the masterstroke, the sliding doors. To a modern driver, accustomed to hinged doors, this seems like a minor detail. But to the milkman, the baker, or the postie in 1955, this was a revelation. Conventional doors swung out into traffic, risking being torn off by a passing bus, or they hit lampposts on narrow pavements. The CA's doors tucked away neatly into the bodywork. It allowed drivers to hop in and out with incredible speed. It became a common sight to see a Bedford CA being driven with the driver's door slid wide open in the summer, the driver hanging out the side to reverse into a tight loading bay. It turned delivery driving from a chore into a fluid, rhythmic dance. If you climb into the cab of a survivor today, you are met with an interior that is Spartan, even by 1950s standards. You sit high up, perched on a vinyl seat that offers about as much support as a church pew. Your left leg gets hot because it's resting against the engine cover. The steering wheel is vast, thin-rimmed, and sits almost horizontally in your lap, like a dinner plate. Under that metal hump sat the trusty engine borrowed from the Vauxhall Wyvern. It wasn't a powerhouse. It produced just enough grunt to haul a 10-hundredweight load up a steep hill, provided you were patient and didn't mind holding up a queue of traffic. Driving one was, and is, a physical activity. The 3-speed gearbox was operated by a long, slender wand on the steering column. It was notoriously vague. Finding second gear required a distinct knack, a movement somewhere between a handshake and stirring a bucket of heavy coal. The suspension was bouncy, and the brakes were drums all around, requiring a firm, panicked stamp to bring the thing to a halt. But none of that mattered. The CA was tough. It was simple. You could fix it with a hammer and a spanner. Unlike the fragile, high-maintenance machinery of today, the CA felt like it was on your side. It was a tool, yes, but it was a plucky one. It was the first van that felt properly modern, designed specifically for the white heat of the commercial boom. This versatility meant the CA soon shed its blue-collar overalls to wear 1,000 different uniforms. Because the chassis was separate from the body, you could bolt almost anything onto the back. It became the standard issue ambulance, rushing patients to A&E with bells ringing. But perhaps its most enduring guise, the one that triggers the deepest nostalgia, is the ice cream van. If you hear the tinkling chimes of Greensleeves in your memory, you are likely picturing a Bedford CA with a fiberglass cow on the roof, serving 90s to a queue of eager kids on a council estate. By the early 1960s, the CA wasn't just a vehicle. It was the wallpaper of British life. However, the Bedford CA was destined to be more than just a beast of burden. As the 1950s turned into the 60s, a new concept was taking hold in the UK, the motor holiday. For the average working family, hotels were expensive and stuffy. Towing a caravan was a cumbersome affair requiring a big car. But then, a company called Martin Walter in Folkestone had an idea. They took the humble builder's van, cut a hole in the roof, and created magic. They called it the Dormobile. With a splash of two-tone paint, usually cream paired with a pastel blue, green or red, the delivery van was transformed into a magic carpet. It promised a level of freedom that had previously been reserved for the wealthy. The genius of the Dormobile lay in its origami-like interior. The front seats, often upholstered in distinctive candy-striped red and white PVC, were known as Dormatic seats. With the pull of a lever, they could fold flat in seconds to form two single beds. A tiny gas hob and a plastic sink were miraculously squeezed into a wooden cabinet, allowing you to fry bacon or brew a pot of tea while parked in a lay-by on the A303. But the real party piece was the roof. With a firm shove, a section of the fiberglass ceiling popped up like an accordion, covered in striped canvas. Suddenly, a grown man could stand upright inside a van that was barely taller than a saloon car. It even had two canvas bunks up there for the children. It was a marvel of British ingenuity. A fully functioning home in a space smaller than a garden shed. For a generation of children, the Bedford CA Dormobile is the smell of damp canvas, calagas, and frying sausages. It represents slow, meandering journeys to Cornwall, the Lake District, or Skegness. It brings back memories of sitting on the engine cowling because it was the warmest seat in the house, watching the tiny wipers fight a losing battle against the driving British rain. It didn't matter that it was cramped. It didn't matter that condensation ran down the metal windows in the morning, soaking your sleeping bag. It was an adventure. The CA democratized the holiday, turning the roadside verge into a dining room and the seafront promenade into a front garden. The Bedford CA seemed invincible. It had defeated the Morris J-Type. It had outsold the Ford Thames. It was the furniture of the nation. But the world was changing faster than the folks at Luton realized. The winding B roads were being bypassed by the M1 motorway. The pace of life was quickening. Drivers were no longer content to chug along at 45 miles per hour. They demanded speed, heat, and comfort. And in October 1965, a meteor struck the British commercial vehicle industry. Its name was the Ford Transit. If the Bedford CA was a reliable old cart horse, the Transit was a racehorse. Designed by Ford of Britain and Germany working together, it was a revelation. It was wide where the CA was narrow. It was stable where the CA was wobbly. Crucially, the Transit used components from Ford cars. It drove like a car. A transit driver could cruise at 70 miles per hour in the outside lane, listen to the radio, and arrive at his destination without needing a chiropractor. Suddenly, the beloved Bedford's quirks, the vague column change, the deafening engine noise, the way it leaned terrifyingly in crosswinds, didn't seem like character anymore. They seemed archaic. Overnight, the CA looked like a relic from a bygone age. It was a pre-war concept trying to survive in the atomic age. Fleet managers defected in droves. The writing wasn't just on the wall. It was sprayed in large letters across every transport cafe in the country. The future belonged to Ford. But obsolescence alone doesn't explain why the Bedford CA has physically vanished from the earth. After all, we still see plenty of Morris Minors, Land Rovers, and VW campervans from the same era. The true killer of the Bedford CA wasn't the Transit, it was the tin worm. These vans were built to a price. The steel used was often painfully thin and seemingly devoid of any rust protection. They were tools, designed to be worked hard, battered against loading docks, and left out in the British rain. And they rotted with terrifying enthusiasm. The sills, the wheel arches, the sliding door runners, and the chassis outriggers would begin to bubble and flake within just a few years of leaving the factory. Crucially, there was a difference in mindset compared to the Volkswagen. The VW split screen became a counterculture icon. Hippies loved them, surfers loved them, so they were patched up and saved. The Bedford CA was just a van. It was a disposable asset. When the MOT certificate expired and the welding bills piled up, nobody thought to save them. They were driven into the ground, crushed into cubes, and recycled into washing machines. The very thing that made them so successful, their cheap, hard-working nature, ensured that almost none would survive to see the 21st century.